Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 333 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin, joined by wonderful guest Joe Patrick, and of course my co-host Adnan Ikic. We're going to be taking you guys through the Falcons storylines that matter coming out of minicamp and OTAs. Basically, what you should actually, be paying attention to. And as much as we all enjoy all of the clips and all of the little things that come out and, the little nugs here and there that we get from the reporting, some of which have come from Joe himself, that we're going to try to parse through all of the fluff and get you guys some little things here and there that might actually matter for the season at large, for the rest of the summer, as we enter into, of course, the dead zone here until training camp kicks off, which we have actually heard official training camp dates. The second, I believe it's the third week of July, fourth week of July, something like that. It's in the 20s. It's in the 20s of July.
24th?
24th, yeah. Mm-hmm. So exciting stuff there. We're going to get you through the dead zone, starting with tonight's show. And, of course, welcoming in our guest, Joe Patrick. He's at JPatrick200. Joe, welcome back. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Just making my own foray into the podcasting world. And Kevin, I know you can kind of sympathize with me here, or empathize with me. How crazy you feel talking into a mic by yourself for 30 minutes. It's a unique experience, but getting used to it. And looking forward to the season actually, or at least training camp getting going, so we can have some more substantive stuff to talk about. But of course, we're going to talk tonight about some stuff that's been going on lately.
Yeah, no, that was like the biggest thing, because like. And you probably getting the exact same experience, which was like, I went on as a guest a lot before started the program, and even when I started it, it was mostly like Eric Robinson and I doing it together. So it was rarely that I have ever did a show like by myself. And those like first like 3 to 5 episodes that you record like solo are like the weirdest, like most awkward. I'll be like, no, I don't like that. I don't like that intro. I got to record that again. Like those take like 10 times longer than like any other episode. Now I just hit record. I'm like, let's go. And you just learn that people love it. You know what you're talking about. You know what you're doing. We all know Joe knows what he's talking about. So definitely go check that out, guys. And the people are going to love it. They love to hear us talk Falcons. And among the other great folks that talk Falcons at this time of year, my co-host Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, welcome back. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. These are the shows where you see who the true sickos are, and I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about, the people who will be viewing us in the middle of June when they could be doing anything else with their summer nights at this point. So, we appreciate all of you. And yeah, hey, I remember last week I was on here and I talked about how much it was raining in Atlanta and how annoying it got. It rained 7 days since then as well. So it has not stopped at all. And the great irony is, come training camp, when we're over there covering it, we'll be begging for some cloud cover and we'll be begging for some rain at that point.
Yeah, it's maybe if you don't want it to rain, we probably shouldn't mention it, because I don't think that's been helping things. But we also have finally, I believe Monday, we will finally get our first 90-degree day here in June. It has been in the 70s every day in Syracuse. So I'm thankful for that as a former Southern refugee that has moved north to escape the oppressive heat. So I've been enjoying this summer up here very much. But we can only avoid it for so long. Even up here, it's eventually going to get into the 90s. It's usually July, but yeah, it's still rare. But, I digress. We're here to talk about Falcons storylines, not weather storylines. We're going to save that for the end of June pod, where we go deep on our meteorology takes. But for tonight's show, we're going to be talking about the Falcons, and we're going to be getting Joe's take on sort of what he's seen at minicamp, anything that he thinks is worth discussing. Obviously, we've had some little news bits, so we got to run with those as much as possible, right? We got Jaire Alexander signing with the Ravens. We've got the Falcons shuffling the running back room, which might not usually cause much of an eyebrow raise, but I think it does in this case, because they actually moved on from last year's 6th-round pick, Jace McClellan, who I had making the roster on my first roster projection, and they instead bring in the first UFL signing of the cycle for any team, running back Jashawn Corbin. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we get into tonight's show. But I'm going to forget if I don't do it right now. So we're going to talk about BetOnline, our tonight's sponsor. Thanks again to BetOnline for sponsoring the show, folks. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season's in full swing. We get to enjoy Ronald Acuna Jr. absolutely crushing it every week, and that seems to be the one positive constant for the Braves. But I do believe they are up on the Mets as of recording now.
I was just looking at the score right now. Yep, 3-0.
Okay, so that is a positive development. And again, I try to talk about the Braves as little as possible because I seem to only bring misery to that franchise. So I'm going to restrict my misery bringing to just the Falcons and try not to bring it to the Braves. But they've also got, unfortunately, no more NHL finals, as the Panthers, the Florida Panthers, not the Carolina Panthers, thankfully. The Florida Panthers have just won their second straight championship. So NHL over, but NBA finals may be wrapping up very soon, but that's still going as well. BetOnline's got more ways than ever to stay in the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. They've also got UFC, boxing, tennis, NFL futures. They've got it all, folks. Go check it out there at BetOnline. And if that's not enough, they've still got BetOnline's casino, where they've got all the top Vegas-style games, poker, blackjack, live slots, all that stuff. If that's your stuff, go check it out, betonline.ag. Use our promo code BELIEVE. It's BLEAV to get access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right. So let's do some news hits first here, because I mentioned it. I think it's something that I think a lot of people are maybe downplaying, and maybe for good reason. So I guess we can determine if this is one of the storylines that matters or not. But Jashaun Corbin ended up leading the United Football League, the UFL, in rushing this year. And I know the numbers don't look super gaudy, but keep in mind, folks, that UFL plays a lot less games than the NFL, so you have to keep that in mind when you're looking at the stats. But ends up leading the UFL in rushing yardage. Was a former, I believe, undrafted running back out of Florida State, who did, I think, take one NFL carry in a couple of years and bounced around on the practice squads. But Corbin's tape is kind of interesting. He does have experience as a returner as well. And obviously, if the team is moving on from Jason McClellan, maybe that says more about McClellan not really being able to overcome his injury, which is something that the team was aware of when he was drafted, and it seemed to kind of dampen his ability to contribute in his rookie season. So obviously, we hope McClellan can bounce back, and we'll hopefully be able to catch on somewhere else. But Joe, I mean, obviously you didn't have a chance to see Corbin because the signing came after they were done practicing, but do you have any thoughts on whether this could be a move that might actually shake up the bottom of the running back depth chart?
I mean, I think he'll have a chance to make this roster. I mean, like you said, you put Jason McClellan on your roster because it feels like some running backs they're gonna carry some of the running back, and Carlos Washington is still hanging around this team. Like he's a guy who's still been there, which I think goes to show that they're frankly still open to options there at, that reserve running back role. And, that role is going to have to, there's a lot that goes into it in terms of making the team outside of what you can actually do as a running back. It's like, can you make an impact on special teams? Can you be, a guy who could return in a pinch if needed, but can do some other things? I think ultimately that's what's going to determine who is making the team. And I don't think that necessarily, whether it's Jashaun Corbin or if it's Carlos Washington or whoever, they're not necessarily going to be on game day rosters, but you want to have those players around so that you can, call on them, or, God forbid you have an injury or something. They're there as a reserve. Fortunately for this team, you already have Bijan and you've got Tyler Algier. So you kind of, you're not really looking for that quote unquote backup or change of pace guy. It's really more of just that reserve role. And from what I read about him was that he has like some decent size and some good kind of toughness through contact. Nothing special in terms of the athleticism or, burst or anything like that. But I don't think you're necessarily looking to find some star in that sense when you're looking for this type of player. You're just looking for someone who's generally functional. And again, when you're talking about special teams, could be functional in a lot of different areas. And so we'll just see what he turns out to be.
Yeah, I think he's interesting. And Adnan, I'm curious if you got thoughts on Corbin. And, a lot of people seem to think this was like signaling a potential, trade for Algier, which, I don't really think that. But, I'm curious what you think, Adnan, with regards to that and the signing in general.
No, I mean, I'm with Joe. I think he's going to be a decent camp body. I think his performance in the UFL, leading the league in rushing, had a little over 500 rushing yards. I think that sort of earned him like a training camp spot, and it sort of earned him the recognition to be the first UFL signing of this cycle. But yeah, decent size, 5'11", a touch over 200 pounds. He had 1,000 yards from scrimmage, a little over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in his last season at Florida State, which was, his first real year as like getting real starter work. It helps him that he does have some experience returning. I mean, obviously Jamal Agnew is going to be the punt returner. You have Ray McLeod there for kick returns, but it helps anyone to sort of be able to be thrown into that role in an emergency situation when it comes to your prospects of making the roster. Do I think he's going to make the roster? As of right now, I would probably give Carlos Washington that inside track to it, just given the fact that he's been here for a while. He knows the system. At this point, he was with this coaching staff in training camp last year, and I mean, he played pretty well in the preseason last year as well. So I think that this move signals more so their trust in Carlos Washington than anything else, and I think he's the real winner of it, because it was him and Jace McClellan last year for that RB3 role, and it was a pretty intense battle at one point in camp. But the RB3 spot in Atlanta isn't set in stone by any means, and I do think that one of the reasons why Corbin may have signed here, I imagine that he probably would have had offers elsewhere as well after his previous season in the UFL to join some other training camp. But I think one of the reasons why he ended up here is because it does give him a legitimate shot at making the roster at that RB3 spot. So we'll see what happens throughout camp.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, and the thing with Jace was it was sort of like we didn't really get, and like it was a good reason, is that like we really didn't need anyone to play other than Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson. Like those guys handled all the snaps, and that's fortunate for the Falcons that we were able to have that. But you just kind of got the feeling that he just wasn't fully healthy, even in when he did make it on the field for preseason. It just we didn't get to see a whole lot. So obviously hope that he could find success elsewhere. It's tough to come back from when you, even if you get drafted. This is a great example. Like even if you get drafted, health can stand in the way, and teams don't have a ton of patience, even for guys that they do draft late on day 3. But Corbin is interesting, kind of an unusual, not necessarily unusual build, but it was weird to see like I believe it was the Brahmas that he played for in the UFL. Kind of used him as like a workhorse, and he's 5'11", 200, and maybe that's just a product of UFL defenses really struggling. It seemed like the offenses really took off this year. I know that I watched a little bit of that championship game where I think the winners scored like 50-something points, so good for them. But Corbin, his like big thing, I read his scouting report, and I watched some highlights, is like he sees the hole really well. So like if it was blocked up for him, he just bam right through it every time, and that's honestly what holds back a lot of rookies, and I wonder if that's something he's been able to perfect with just a little bit more time. He's fast, but not like burner fast, and he's like got really good contact balance, but he's not big. So I kind of feel like in the NFL, teams were like, oh, he's not overly special in any one area. Yeah, he's got good vision, but we'd rather have some higher upside guy or this or that. But what a lot of times happens, these high upside guys can't see the hole, and then they can't, you can't trust them to take carries. So I think he's got a shot. Like anyone that's got great vision, Algier's another great example of this. Like Algier's not the fastest. He is large. He's a large man. Shout out to Tyler Algier. But I think Corbin's got a shot. Like if you've got the vision, I think you got a shot in the NFL. So now with a little more experience, I'm interested to see what he could do. And yeah, I know Robert Kelly asked about it in the chat. Could this be a possible way for the Falcons to be able to keep an extra receiver if they don't have to keep Jamal Agnew and Corbin can be your returner? I mean, I wouldn't rule that out. Like I think that's a possibility. I don't think he has punt return experience. I think he has kick return, but I mean, you can obviously learn how to return punts, but I think his best path is probably locking up a kick return spot or being one of the team's like best returners. And that could definitely help him in sort of a tiebreaker situation with someone like a Carlos Washington or even some of these newer additions like a Nate Carter, the UDFA. So interested to see. Yeah, go ahead.
And I would just add, I think to your point about the vision, I think that, or I imagine, hypothesize that's maybe more of a trait that the Falcons would value versus some others, given like the outside zone scheme and the fact that like runs are designed basically to be kind of tracked on a certain way, and then there's like designed basically potential cutbacks that they're supposed to be able to essentially be watching out for as they're running and be able to see where to take it. And so, that's a kind of attribute that could potentially be more valuable in this system than something that's more gap scheme stuff, and where you're looking for more just like hardline running and then physical attributes there.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. I think his skill set does fit this team well, and given that Bijan's like just a jack of not a jack of all trades, master of none. He's like a master of all trades, sort of kind of guy. And Algier is your bruiser. You could theoretically go for a third running back that was not necessarily the biggest. You could go for more of a speed threat or a receiving specialist or whatever. And last year, I mean, that was Avery Williams, right, that they had.
Mm-hmm.
So they could be a little bit more creative with their third running back, given the presence of Tyler Algier. Now, if they do want to trade Tyler Algier at some point, that would complicate that a little bit. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. But yeah, to answer that question, I don't really think this signals anything with regards to Algier. I still think that if they get a great offer for Algier, they probably need to strongly consider taking it. But it would need to be a good offer, because I don't think you're getting out of bed for a 4th round pick. It's like, yeah, that's a good quote unquote offer for a backup running back, but he's more valuable to the Falcons than he is a 4th round pick in the future, right? So if someone starts coming with a day 2 pick, it's like, okay, we can have that conversation. But I kind of have a hard time seeing that unless somebody has like a significant injury or something like that. So nobody's hoping for that, but if that does happen, there'll probably be heated trade interest around Tyler Algier. The other one was a guy that was linked to Atlanta due to his connections to Jerry Gray and things like that with Jaire Alexander. I think last week we kind of cautioned folks that, if he wants to go to Atlanta, it's probably going to be for a pretty good price tag, but more than likely he's going to want to go to a contender, and he might take like a Azeez Ojulari style deal. That's exactly what happened. He takes $4 million to go to Baltimore with a couple million in incentives there. And that's a great signing for Baltimore. I think he's a perfect fit there. Gives him a chance to sort of rehab his career, and if he could put together a healthy season, he could cash in again next year. But are you surprised at all that he didn't end up signing in Atlanta, Adnan?
No, I'm not surprised at all that he didn't end up signing here. I get it. I understand what he was going for, signing with Baltimore. Apparently, he and Lamar Jackson, they both went to Louisville. They're both very close together. And I'm assuming Jaire is sort of going to, given the contract, he's going to a spot that sort of maximizes his chances of winning a title. I don't think Atlanta's at that level where, veterans are flocking here to try and ring chase. But yeah, it's a hell of a deal. Like $4 million for Jaire Alexander, who, when healthy, is one of the, upper echelon corners in the NFL. The big problem for him is, when healthy, he's played 14 games over the past 2 years combined. But even so, there's not, given the incentives here laden in this deal, it's not really a huge risk for the Ravens. And yeah, for Jaire Alexander, it's a chance for him to, sort of go for that ring, even though I do think he could have made more on the open market elsewhere. But I never imagined the Falcons were really major players for him. I don't think it's the same as sort of if Jalen Ramsey hit the market, just given the fact that Raheem Morris has that connection with Ramsey, and, players tend to sort of flock to old coaches that they like playing for, and coaches tend to, try and bring in their players from the past. But yeah, I don't think Alexander was ever really in play for Atlanta.
Yeah, I could agree with that. Do you feel kind of the same way about the Alexander move?
Totally agree.
Yeah,
totally agree. When he came on the market, I immediately was like, no, this is just not a player I don't think the Falcons are interested in. And I totally agree with Adnan. I think Jalen Ramsey's a different situation. Still don't think that that's going to happen. But I think that it could. There was a world where Jalen Ramsey maybe could have happened if the draft went a different way. They had more picks, frankly, at this point in time to be able to potentially throw around. As it stands, they don't. So I don't really think they're going to bring in either of these guys. But there's a big difference, I think, between how the coaching staff would have and the front office would have valued a guy like Jalen Ramsey versus a Jaire Alexander.
Yeah. I think the big thing with Jalen Ramsey is that we know he can play the slot at a high level, and if for some reason they weren't able to get a slot option in the draft, or perhaps knock on wood, like if there's some kind of injury, then I think that the interest in Ramsey could heat up quick. But like at this point, the Falcons probably can't afford to send more than a fourth for Ramsey, and I'm not sure that the Dolphins are jumping at that at this point. I think if they were, this trade would have probably gotten done already. So anything more than that, Falcons can't afford at this stage, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But not surprised that the Falcons haven't jumped for either of those guys. And shout out to Jaire. I think this is going to be a good fit for him, and if he can stay healthy, this could be a pathway to a big contract next year, a chance to sort of reset his career. So best of luck to him. Hope that works out. Brandon says Kirk for Ramsey trade. Who says no? Yeah, let's do it. I'm down. I'm down. But I mean, that's sort of the news going on, which that should tell you that this is mid-June. Yeah, that should be the biggest giveaway. But the fact that we had any news to talk about is a blessing, of course. But let's get Joe. Just curious. We did see obviously mandatory minicamp. I think some people were expecting more drama around Kirk Cousins. Not really any drama to be had, and I don't think that surprised you in the slightest.
Yeah, no, I mean, I fully expected him to be there. The money kind of joke meme, whatever it is with him is totally true. But I think that's just, people say like, oh, Kirk's not the kind of guy who won't want to lose money. I'm telling you, no, none of these players want to lose money. Like even coaches don't want to go after refs when they really want to publicly because they don't want to give their money away for nothing, basically. So showed up, and I think he said the right things to be perfectly honest. I mean, kind of joking about it just a second ago, but I mean, I thought he was pretty classy in what he said. I still like it doesn't totally square, everything with me in terms of just personally speaking as to what happened last year. And I don't know if you want to kind of get into the whole thing. My whole thing is like, I've heard this argument that, well, he's a competitor. He's always going to like fight through these injuries and such. And I totally get that. But I think it's a different level when you're kind of concealing the injury from the team in order to be able to kind of play through this. And so that's my big gripe. But ultimately, he's here. He's, he understands the situation. I've kind of compared it to the way that he's discussed hitting free agency in his past, where, he's like kind of talked about it openly about, he and his agent decide that the best way for them to get a deal that they like is to go to the market and see what the market says about his value. And I kind of feel like there was a semblance of that happening here with him being so public about wanting to play and kind of making his availability known to teams. Now, obviously there was, a wrinkle here where the team was going to have to value match for the Falcons what they would want. And ultimately that was not the case. And that basically sets the market for what he is. He was not worth, a pick or whatever it was going to be for the Falcons to accept. And so ultimately he's under contract. He understands that. And so he's here. And if there is an injury that occurs that changes the calculus, that makes it worth the Falcons' while, then potentially a deal could get done down the line. I'm not, I think the Falcons would probably, I'm kind of go back and forth whether the Falcons actually want that to happen or not. I do think that I believe them when they say like they're not only just comfortable, like I think it actually does bring them comfort to know that they have a veteran quarterback behind the rookie. But having said that, I think that, you want to make the most out of that situation. So until that happens, we'll see. But I think that Kirk has basically seen that teams have had chances to come get him and they have opted to go a different route. And so he is where he is now. Yeah.
And like part of that is, his stance as well, which was like, I'm not accepting a trade until after the draft. And it's like, well, if you're going to go that route, like teams aren't going to wait around for right. 37-year-old quarterback necessarily, unless they'll wait around for a 42-year-old quarterback, apparently. That's a whole other podcast topic, but that would have been the funniest outcome ever if Arthur Smith had to come trade for Kirk Cousins because Aaron Rodgers said no. But unfortunately, I mean, I don't know. We can't officially rule that out yet. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is one of the most enigmatic figures in all of sports. But, I agree with you entirely. It's at this point, like I think the Falcons have always been telling the truth that they're comfortable having him as the backup. I think all the stuff about Cousins being like people being that, oh, Cousins is going to be mean to Michael Penix or he's going to be a problem for Michael Penix. It's like, no, like no, that's not who he is. First of all, and second, like Penix seems like a confident dude. They actually seem to have a really good relationship, which is nice. And again, it's like, I always thought it was weird when quarterbacks were like, I can't remember which quarterback. I don't know if it was Flacco maybe that was like, oh, I'm not here to train. I'm not here to coach anybody up. It's like, what? Like that guy didn't like want to come in behind you. Like he didn't want to replace. Like the team drafted Penix. Penix didn't say like, oh, hey, I'm here to take your job, Kirk. Like thanks.
Right.
Like
right.
So, and I think Kirk totally understands that. He's been in the same situation. Like.
And
he got drafted, I mean, it's
and I'm sure it probably helps the situation that that Penix did have that mentality when he came in. He was like, "All right, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to learn. I'm going to be quiet." I love Raheem the way that he phrased it. Like we want him to move in the shadows and like learn. But like that's kind of the mentality that I think he wanted at the time because Kirk was the focus at that point. And I think that, Penix, to his credit, was very studious, very on top of his stuff, and by all accounts, very impressive as a scout team quarterback.
Yeah.
And now he gets a shot. And that probably, I'm sure Kirk appreciates that. And again, like these guys, unless you come across like a true asshole, like most guys, I think, especially in Kirk's situation, are kind of going to understand the realities of it. And, I think Mark Raimondi's written about the fact that they carpool together sometimes and stuff like that. So, it's just two good dudes, honestly. Like it's there's not a whole lot more to read into it other than that, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. And I'm guessing your thoughts on this situation haven't changed much either, but you're welcome to weigh into the whole situation as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, Atlanta's best chance of moving Kirk Cousins was if Aaron Rodgers decided to not come back and play for Pittsburgh. I think that was probably the most feasible destination because, it sort of would have given them that little bit of desperation to come to the negotiating table with Atlanta. I think the second, it was the morning. It was like in the morning when they like announced that Rodgers was going to be, signing for Pittsburgh. Like, I think that morning it sort of sealed the deal that, Kirk Cousins is going to be in Atlanta. He's making a lot of money. He's going to be getting a lot, on those game checks. And, it's honestly, I know he wants to play. I know he's a competitive guy. Of course, he wouldn't be at this level if he wasn't. But it's not the baddest gig in the world. It's kind of a sweet gig of, your body isn't really getting, put out there and crushed, and you're still making these hundreds of thousands of dollars every single week. So I do think that Kirk is not going to pose much of an issue. And I mean, at the end of the day, if Atlanta doesn't move him, if there isn't a desperate team that comes to the table because of a training camp injury or a preseason injury to their quarterback or whatever, the Falcons end up having what's essentially a high-level backup, just in case something happens to their starter throughout the season. And, there is some quality in that, and there is some value in having that as well. So I think the most likely scenario is Cousins plays out the year on Atlanta's roster, and then they move on from him next year.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's definitely a possibility. And it's like the other thing is like I keep talking about like, oh yeah, well we're just waiting for an injury, and then Kirk will get a chance to start. And the sad, unfortunate truth is that injury could happen to Atlanta, right? I mean, no one wants to ever talk about that, and but it's infinitely cheaper to just have him on the roster. So like, don't rush.
Even if it's Penix like hitting his hand on someone's helmet and like it's a 3-week thing, or it help. If you look at around the rosters last year, I mean, like a non-trivial amount of backup quarterbacks had to come in and play at least some snaps. I'm not talking like half the season or anything. Some are, but a lot of these quarterbacks just get banged up. It's the quarterbacks are asked to do more kind of getting outside the pocket and making things happen and taking some hits more than they have in recent years. So, I mean, I think that it certainly doesn't hurt. Like Raheem Morris said, I don't know if it doesn't hurt. It never hurts to have someone like Kirk Cousins just there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, I remember a few years ago, the best instance of that was Russell Wilson, a guy who had never missed a single game in the NFL. I think he was, the true Iron Man, like in every definition of it, playing for Seattle on that Thursday night game. And remember, on his follow-through of a pass, I think it was Aaron Donald, like I think got him on the finger, or like I don't know if he caught into a helmet or like another hand, but it like dislocates his finger, and he's all of a sudden out 4 to 5 weeks on what looked like the most routine of plays. And that's something where it really goes to show you that no matter how tough these quarterbacks are, and nobody is ever going to question their toughness and their sort of desire to be out there, shit can happen like at any point. And I mean, yeah, I just remember that ridiculous report that came out afterwards that, oh, Russell Wilson's rehabbing 18 hours a day. And it's like, what, he's moving his finger like up and down? Like, what?
Getting the stem there on the finger. Just.
I remember Aaron Rappaport having like an actual 1 minute like news hit about his like 18-hour or like rehabs. And I'm like, all right, bro, like, just, we're not children, like, stop.
I mean, Russell Wilson would be the person who like would tell a reporter and go on and on about how much rehab he's getting on his finger.
That's very
yeah. No, that reminds me. I don't know if anyone's a classical music fan in the chat, but the Two Set channel on YouTube, very popular. Their bit is that the parents are always telling you that you need to practice more. So it's like you need to practice 40 hours a day. So practice 40 hours, everybody. Make sure you're doing it. So
I mean, remember that report of him doing jumping jacks like on the plane to London with Denver a few years ago. And it's like, man, like I'm cranky on an airplane. There's nothing I would rather do than tell that dude to shut the fuck up and sit down. But you can't do that because he's the quarterback.
It's like, oh my god, like everyone on the plane, like these are all professional athletes. Like these are all the highest level like professionals, and like just they're all looking at Russell Wilson doing jumping jacks on the plane. Like, oh my god.
If I can get off topic a little bit, this just kind of made me raise my eyebrow the other day. I guess it was a couple of weeks ago. Albert Breer was doing some reporting talking about the quarterback situation in Pittsburgh. And he said that there were some voices inside the building that wanted to go back to Russell Wilson, or wanted to continue with Russell Wilson or go back to Russell Wilson at some point that season. But it was basically like the organization made the call to continue with Russell Wilson. And I can't help but wonder if that may have been Arthur Smith, because everything that Arthur Smith said about quarterbacks, like in terms of like the things that he hates about, these big characters and with their big, just so highfalutin, and like he hates that entitlement, and like I feel like Russell Wilson just like hits that like a hammer on the nail. So
yeah,
I wonder if that was him, and he just would have rather had a functional running quarterback.
Yeah, that offense, like it was really interesting to see how that played out. Obviously, because it initially looked like, oh, maybe it was a good idea to go back to Russell Wilson. And then it was like, oh, no, wait, this offense is incredibly limited, and teams were just kind of caught off guard by having to defend it differently. And, I feel like Justin Fields, like assuming Fields could have stayed healthy, like I feel like that version of the offense was harder to defend and better for their style of football, because they just wanted to grind out close games. And it's like, run heavy game script with your, one of the better running quarterbacks in the NFL to complement your run game. Sounds great to me, but
Arthur could have broken out the Marcus Mariota playbook, with Justin Fields, and run some freaking speed option like he was running there.
Oh man, I hadn't thought about that play in a long time. But yeah, thankfully it's nice to see that Falcons did do some unorthodox things at quarterback. So now we don't have to be talking about waiting until June to sign Aaron Rodgers, or like whether we should have kept Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. Or I would have been. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
I still wonder if the Steelers might just sign Kirk Cousins next year. Like if possible. I think it's possible. Depends on what they end up doing at quarterback and how the Rodgers experiment goes. But
they do seem to like refuse to ever just like do the reset they need to do to just get a top quarterback prospect.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that checks out. That checks out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, the Steelers at this point, they're going to go 9-8, and they're going to lose by 3 touchdowns in the wild card game. It's like clockwork.
Tale as old as time. Yeah. we got Alex Foster with the $5. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you. Says the Steelers allegedly want Kyle Pitts. I feel like I don't want to do it for the picks, but I would want to do it for the chaos. It's like, yeah, I mean, I feel like that would be the rudest possible thing you could do to Kyle Pitts. Is like, he's like, oh, finally, I got away from Arthur Smith, the guy who apparently like loves me, but also like refuses to design an offense for me. And then, like, we just trade him right back to Arthur Smith. Like, that would just be the biggest stab in the back imaginable. So I don't feel like I could do that to him. But I mean, I don't know. It depends on how good the offer is. If I was actually the GM and Steelers are offering a second, I mean, it's like, okay. I mean, sorry, Kyle. You know, I can't help you. But yeah, I would feel like that would be cruel personally. But I don't know what you guys. I mean, the chaos would certainly be funny. But yeah, I'm kind of
in the Trayshawn camp where it's like, yes, at a point it would make sense for the Falcons to deal Kyle Pitts, but again, I don't see another NFL team matching that value. And Kyle Pitts is like, while he's not the 4th overall pick, you know, value for you on the field, he's not nothing. You know, he's still providing you something, and I think it's worth going forward with him this year. I mean, I think that Michael Penix as a quarterback and the kind of quarterback that he is the most likely to get the most out of Pitts since Matt Ryan.
Yeah. I'm definitely in the move Kyle Pitts camp. Like, I obviously want value. Like, I wouldn't do it for nothing. I wouldn't do it for like a 5th, but if you can get a 3rd rounder, I'm pulling the trigger at this point. I don't know if he's going to be back after this year. And I mean, at this point, I've just sort of seen enough after like what's it been 4 years. So I think you have what you get, or you get what you see with Kyle Pitts. And if we can get a day 2 pick, I'd be all over that at this point.
I'm with you that he won't be back after this year.
Yeah, they're gonna have to pay London. I think that's kind of that. Like, even if he has a great year this year, I feel like still like they kind of are like, we're either gonna have to pay him or London.
That's gonna be I'm fascinated by what that contract's going to be. Yeah. Like, obviously, not just because, you know, it directly involves the Falcons, but even if I wasn't a Falcons fan, I'd be fascinated by what that contract is going to be, because Jamar Chase reset the market, and after Justin Jefferson reset the market, I think we all love Drake London. I think we would all agree that he's not in that Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson tier of like sort of market resetters. And I'm wondering if, I mean, obviously his agent's going to want a market resetting deal, but I am wondering if Jamar Chase's contract will sort of now be that ceiling for wide receivers, just given the fact that he's better than any of the receivers that are coming up for contracts. And it's always a very interesting phenomenon when you have the guy who's next wanting to be paid as like the highest paid guy, but he's clearly not as good as the highest paid guy, and he's not in sort of that same tier as that highest paid guy. It's different if it's like they're like neck and neck, the way that Chase and Jefferson are. But yeah, I will be very fascinated to see what they do with that London contract come next year.
Yeah, I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that Drake London is like close to leading the NFL in receiving this year, given what we saw with him and Penix and that sort of thing. That's not me saying that I think he's like better than Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, but given that I think he will produce at like a clear wide receiver 1 level. And I mean, I think last year showed that he absolutely deserves to be in the top 10. And I think we all knew as Falcons fans he was in that conversation, but I think a lot of people were like, oh, he's never had 1,000 yards, so he can't be in it. It's like, okay, like how many 1,000-yard receivers is Marcus Mariota supporting, guys? You know, like,
right.
let's be honest, you know. But I do think like this year could absolutely, like, he could get 1,400 yards, 1,500 yards, and in that case, he's going to be asking for the Jamar Chase contract. And given that like the cap is going to continue to go up, you know, people are going to match that contract pretty quick. Even if they're not on his level, it's still going to happen, just because most teams or agents are working off of percentage of cap numbers when the deal is signed. So like, you know, Jamar Chase's percentage will be this, and then next year when teams are signing, they'll want, they'll probably go for a smaller percentage than what Ja'Marr Chase signed for, but that might actually be the same amount or more actual dollars. And, it happens.
Right. That's why we're seeing all these, basically whoever's setting the top of the market at any position now, it's always, he's the most expensive safety of all time or the most expensive corner of all time. These guys are always setting records in the absolute dollars because the salary cap just keeps going up, which is insane. Well, I mean, it's not insane. It's insane how much the salary cap just keeps shooting up, which shows the popularity of the league. It is interesting with Drake because, like, again, in comparison to a Jefferson or a Chase, he's not a receiver that is as likely to bust off like a 70-yard touchdown or something like that, or do something super spectacular just looking aesthetically like those guys are. But it does seem like he's just a machine in terms of, like, again, those balls on the digs. He can't catch the ball obviously anywhere on the field, and he gets those tough yards after the catch where he just runs through tackles and he puts his body on the line. And he picks up the yards after catch in kind of an uglier way than, aesthetically than some of these other top receivers who are more finessey and speedy will do. But, a yard is a yard, right? He's effective. And that's why he was top 5 in the NFL in receiving yards last year. And I'm with you, Kevin. I think he could be right back there in that same area again this year.
Yeah, I'm excited to see, London actually, Kirk did actually feed him pretty well. And obviously Penix did to an even higher degree. So I'm excited to see what that can look like over the course of an entire season. Yeah, I know we had a lot of people asking for some takes from Joe in terms of the rookies, and what you've seen so far. Obviously, guys, no contact, so we can't, there's only so much you can glean. But I know people want to know about Watts and the pass rushers and all that. Anything interesting you've noticed so far from the rookie class?
I think, it's tough. It's really tough because, like, really what these mini camps are for, like, these rookies are basically just kind of understanding the basic schemes and then getting out there on the field and doing a big time jog through, basically, according to Raheem Morris. They're not only are the pads not on, but they're like not even really technically going full speed on a lot of these things. So they're just trying to, they're getting the lay of the land. I will say, just like, you can tell some things from being around them physically. James Pierce Jr. he looks the part. Like he feels the part when you're standing next to him. You feel like this is the prototype build for this, like, long, rangy edge rusher, and not even edge rusher, but he feels like a guy that can just make a lot of things happen because he is so long, and I often talk about something that I got from you, Kevin, and like an idea that you brought up really a couple of years ago, I think, when it was Arthur Smith's last year and they had that kind of bigger defensive line under Ryan Nielsen. They had like Calais Campbell playing on the edge. And while he was very good in that role, he was limited in terms of like the athleticism he could bring to it. And like, honestly, the area he can cover. And you don't think about that as much in terms of an edge rusher, but there are lots of plays to be made where you've got to get horizontal and move, towards the line or towards the sideline and stretch something out or chase somebody down. And it feels like James Pierce Jr. is going to be like much, much different and much, much more effective in that sense than a lot of the guys that the Falcons have basically had since I've been covering the team, which was since 2022. So I think he's going to be, I think that, like, if there's a player that's really going to break through statistically, like especially between him and Jalen Walker as these edge rushers, I would lean towards him actually kind of being the more productive player statistically. Jalen Walker just seems like a great all-around football player, honestly. And he is like, I'm not a Georgia fan, so I didn't watch a lot of him and wasn't really familiar with him in college. He is like way thicker than I thought he was, especially as a guy who was projected as like, moving to an off-ball linebacker, or could have been an off-ball linebacker. He's big. Like he is like thick around the arms, around the waist, but obviously can still move and everything. And just such a professional when you talk to him. He feels different, just in terms of the whole attitude. He doesn't seem like a rookie basically at all when you're talking to these guys. He almost carries himself like he is the leader of all these rookies. Like when we were out there for rookie minicamp, like he's the leader of all these guys and he's kind of bringing everybody with him, which is exactly the kind of personality that sets up for a great career. Xavier Watts is kind of similar. And I love, maybe it's cliche, but I do respect the idea of kind of going after these team captains and just like players who it's not necessarily something that's a determinative for the Falcons, but I know that they kind of took pride a couple years ago in having a draft class where nobody transferred. And Billy Bowman, for example, is a guy who had the opportunity to maybe move schools when there was a coaching change. He didn't, and he really was kind of the heart and soul of that Oklahoma defense. And so I think, when you combine all that, that's like the makings of what you need just in terms of like the people on that side of the ball. And then, but obviously these guys have physical tools too. I think there's obviously going to be some, Billy Bowman's going to have to, get used to playing the slot again, which he obviously has plenty of those kinds of snaps in college. But, at the NFL level, it's a little different beast. And he's not the biggest guy. So I'm sure going to be some learning curves there. But I just I feel like these guys are hungry. And it's almost like maybe, I don't know if they've been spoken to directly about this or they've heard just like what's been expected of them through what's been said in the media by Raheem Morris, but they seem like they're coming in ready to make an impact, ready to contribute. They're full-on players on this team, as opposed to, I'll just kind of like when Clark Phillips was drafted, for example, he came in and there was like this idea of like, you're a developmental player. You need to get used to, you playing at this level. And obviously he also had some size issues that we knew was going to be an adjustment, but it feels like this rookie class, there's not that same kind of feeling. There's this feeling like they're going to come in and be impact players.
Yeah, certainly happy to hear that. I know like fans have sort of been just really wanting an instant impact draft class, and it really hasn't been necessary outside of the first round picks. We haven't really gotten that. I know last year was particularly disappointing for a lot of people, myself included, with, didn't really get to see the second round pick. The third round pick got hurt. Not anyone's fault, there. Yep. But, Dorless, we didn't get to see much at all. And now the sixth round pick has been released. So Zion Logan ends up getting poached off the practice squad. It's not looking good. It's not looking good last year. But so far the people that absolutely haven't panned out are the ones that, were like your late day 3 picks. So that's mostly forgivable. But now we need to see it with Rook and Dorless and those guys. And it does sound like obviously that is another thing that's been brought up is those guys seem to be major figures in terms of the rotation that we're seeing early on, is those guys from last year.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see, and this is kind of moving away from rookies, but I think one of the other kind of the biggest kind of storyline, the thing that I'm interested in coming out of this offseason program and talking to the coaches is this whole attack style defense that they're talking about. Nate Ollie's bringing to this defensive front, and how exactly that's going to work. I mean, I think that it's exciting to think about and intriguing. I don't think that it's necessarily like, oh, well, because they're going to play in this kind of style, that's going to produce great results. I think that there's an opportunity or a chance that it kind of goes poorly or it leaves the defense exposed at times, especially in the run game, to get gashed a little bit more, because it sounds like they're going to be more aggressive and really trying to like penetrate and make plays in the backfield and make big plays, and hope that the back end can kind of cover up for some of the areas that are left vulnerable. But I think it makes sense when you have this kind of young, athletic, dynamic, rangy front with the guys like Zach Harrison, Ruka Rowe, those kinds of interior defensive linemen, I think are an interesting kind of prototype for this style of defense.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the more interesting things to watch, is how they sort of deploy these guys and how they do make use of these young players that we haven't got to see a ton of yet. So there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for those guys. Adnan, wanted to open the floor to you too, if there's anything you wanted to check in with Joe about in terms of minicamp or OTAs or anything else that's been going on.
Look, man, Joe, I get it. I know what minicamp is. Just give me the PR fluff, good vibes that you're hearing from over there, because it's like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Nobody is gonna say anything negative during minicamp. It's hard to like get an evaluation about like what these guys are doing, because it's literally nothing but air. Like there's nothing, there's no like actual like how the O linemen and D linemen are like colliding in training camp, or like even one-on-ones that we're gonna be seeing in training camp. So just give me what your favorite thing has been so far about it, and give me Give me all the fluff. Give me all the fluff that you want to give me.
See, Adnan gets it. Adnan gets it. At least like last year when you bring in a quarterback, you at least can see like an arm, and he's actually throwing the ball, and you can actually see like, holy cow, this like ball is coming off his hand differently. Yeah, there's not as much to really take away from this. Training camp's going to be fascinating, kind of on the flip side of that, because we will actually get to see how do they actually look when they're going kind of full tilt. Even having said that, a lot of the rookies are still practicing by themselves with reserve players. There's like basically usually two teams going at once, and it's like the ones and twos going against each other, and then there's a team that's the reserves, basically the draft picks or the outside of the first round picks, the draft picks, the UDFAs, and just reserve players that are trying to make the team. So having said that, I think like the most interesting thing just like the fun thing is because I'm a golf fan. I play a lot of golf, and there's apparently a big golfing contingent now on this Falcons team, and they all have a big group chat basically on text, and they'll just like when they want to play, they'll send out the bat signal like, hey, we're gonna play here at we need 2, we need 1, we need 3, whatever it is, and they'll get a golf group together and go out and play, and so that's kind of cool. And and for some of the guys, they've been playing for a while. Was it Ryan Newsel, Jesse Matthews, Dylan Drummond, and Younghoe Koo? I think I nailed it. Those are the 4 best, according to Newsel. And I didn't realize this. Penix was talking about it. He said that like Dylan Drummond and Jesse Matthews are shooting like in the 70s. So like these guys are really good. Yeah. But still, it's like Penix is playing now. He was a fisherman, going back. That's like his true love, but he's kind of picking up the game of golf. But it's like it's a way for them to be a little bit competitive, to get for Penix, it's getting out of his comfort zone, and maybe but it's just anyone who's played golf together, like you're out there for 4 hours with somebody, and there's nothing else you can do but just get to know the people that you're with. You just start talking about anything. So that's kind of like the fun thing. There's been like, some chatter about speaking of Newsel, like, how he's going to fit in. But again, like a lot of the talk is just like how proud they are of him and how hard he's worked to kind of get to this position. We don't actually know how it's going to look with him being the center for this team, and whether it's going to be better or worse or indifferent. Maybe that's the most hopeful result, is that it doesn't look much different than what we remember. But yeah, like that's the kind of thing that is basically that mini camp is has mostly been about, is kind of learning some of these types of stories. Yeah.
Very cool. I love to hear that stuff, and it's fun.
I think and I think like they have things planned. Like I'm kind of like making light of it. Like, I'm excited to see like what Zach Robinson can do with this team this year going into the season. Like I've really been reflecting on how hard of a job it must have been for him last year going into it, kind of knowing the limitations that Kirk Cousins had. And I remember how shocking that first game was. And that was bad. Like that was a bad game plan. It was poorly executed. It was entirely too predictable in terms of the play calling and such. But I'm excited to see what he can do, because I felt like they were really they had something going there, obviously, in those final 3 games with Penix. And so as long as Penix can just, be consistent with the accuracy, which has been, it was rougher at the beginning, and I kind of posted some, and I was posting some of his throws, and it wasn't like I was intentionally trying to post incompletions that he was having. I was just getting on my phone, just posting whatever I recorded, and they just so happened to, have a couple incompletions there. But I would say as it went on, it seemed like he was getting kind of in a better rapport with some of his guys. And I really do like, even though it's just throwing on air, when he's throwing to guys, they're catching it like in full stride, like truly full stride. And that's exciting, because a lot of these times you just see quarterbacks they don't want to throw incompletions, so they're just kind of throwing it slightly behind the receivers, and the receivers kind of have to chop their feet a little bit to slow themselves down to make the catch. And I like the fact that he's kind of like pushing them to their limits a little bit.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. It's good to see. And this is the time, like, this is why all this, like, people who track, like, like there was the Browns guys that were like tracking every completion and throw and training camp. It's like, all right, here's today's stats. It's like, you don't want like to grade quarterbacks like that, because you want your quarterback trying the throws he's nervous to try.
You know
now.
Exactly what they were doing with that. Like,
who threw that, Adnan? Who threw that?
it was the all right. Shador Sanders has done this, and he looks so much better. But the thing is, like that's what gets you viral. That's been what ESPN has been posting. It's been what people have been looking at. And it's like, all right, like it's sort of a cheap way of like getting viral. Like, well, we do the tracking during training camp, but I feel like it's a little like we're not gonna like track. All right, he threw a completion, against air.
You're not tracking Indy,
Yeah.
like you're tracking team, like when they're actually scrimmaging.
Yeah, well, when they're like 7-on-7 or like 11-on-11, like we're like actually like tracking those, like and it'll be me, Mark, and Daniel, and we'll always like sort of get together and be like, all right, do you have this? Is this like accurate? We'll like double check each other's work, but it's like yeah, it's like right now on minicamp, it's like, all right, it's like me going to the backyard, throwing it to someone. It's like, all right, I'm 1 for 1 now. Like,
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. No, it's just a little bit ridiculous. But yeah, that you want your quarterback trying the throws they're nervous to try or the throws they're not good at this point. Like, that's what this is for. You're trying to build out your skill set. You're trying to get more comfortable. You don't want guys being afraid to have their stats and practice tracked. Like, that is not, something that you want to.
And like, for example, also there was one time where, I don't know what happened on like the first rep because like, they basically, they basically all the receivers and backs cycle through. They do a rep on one side of the field and then they flip it. Everybody, they are down at the other side of the field. So the quarterbacks go down there. They come back the other way. And when Penix was doing his rep with Bijan, he like went over and talked to him for a while, probably like a couple minutes, like, and you could see Penix kind of making some gestures with his hands and such. And then they ran the route and it was fine. And I don't know if there was something that, Bijan maybe didn't do the time before. I don't think it was an incompletion pass or whatever, but it was nice to see like Penix again, kind of showing some leadership there, showing some initiative to, make sure that they had whatever it was that they were talking about kind of squared up. So that kind of stuff is good to see from a young quarterback.
Yeah, love to see that for sure. Guys, I think is anything else you thought was important to mention tonight, Joe, before we sign off? I think we covered a lot of the good
That's
stuff.
That's about it, honestly.
Yeah. Figured as much, and that's just the nature of how it is now. But don't worry, guys. In about a month, the fire hose will get turned on, and there'll be more than you know how to deal with coming in each and every day on this program and on Joe's program as well. So tell the people,
That's
Joe,
right,
first of all, about your new show.
Yeah, Joe Patrick on football. It's a very clever name. I didn't come
very
up
humble
with it,
name. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Humble, for sure. Yeah, Joe Patrick on football, which is really just a Falcons podcast, but legal.
Hey, theoretically, it could be about other things. You could talk about. We talked about the Steelers tonight. You know,
right? Exactly.
We did. Yeah. So,
I might. Yeah, I'll be bringing on some people to talk. So it'll be a fun time. Yeah, I need to bring on some people, so it's not just me talking to my camera, feeling like a psycho. So yeah, Joe Patrick on football, wherever you get your podcasts.
Absolutely, check that out, guys. He's also at JPatrick200 on the Twitters. You can follow him there. Adnan Ikic with us tonight as well. He's at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you're working on you want to let the people know about?
I'm gonna plug the Falcoholic.com because we're still trudging along in this dead period. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough right now.
It's tough. We're really scraping.
It's very dry right now, but it's as dry in like terms of football news as it is wet in the city of Atlanta right now.
That is pretty terrifying. That's a good point. So yeah, a lot, not many news bits going to come in, folks, over the next month, but we've got lots of great content here too. We're going to be talking about the roster. We're going to be talking about battles to watch in training camp. We're going to be talking about pretty much anything, anything goes really. I mean, maybe we can make fun of Aaron Rodgers on his latest Vision Quest. I mean, if that comes in, I'm not above that. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Kevin Knight of Falcoholic. Kevin, if you want to do the show a favor, go take a couple minutes, go to your podcast platform of choice, leave us a 5-star review. That really helps the podcast get discovered. Same thing with the YouTube channel. If you're watching here now, leave us a like, subscribe. We're getting closer to 10K, which is a major milestone in terms of subscribers. So if you want to help us out, you can do that. or you could join the Patreon, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live, or you can join up with the YouTube channel memberships. We're going to be getting started on the Falcoholic Fantasy Leagues real soon for our supporters. So Patreon or YouTube channel members, those guys get access. So if you're interested in taking part in that, get signed up there. We'll probably get those started close to before preseason, and then we'll do the draft usually right around the third preseason game. But yeah, guys, we appreciate y'all hanging out with us here on Falcoholic Live. We will, of course, have more shows coming your way. I believe I will have I'm not sure what position I'm going to do first. We'll start the roster review series. Might do quarterback, might do running back. Given that we just signed Deshaun Corbin, maybe I'll start with running back, because we actually have a little bit of a move there. We'll go through that over the course of the offseason. We'll have some more guests on as we get through the desert of football content here over the next month. And then, of course, training camp's going to kick off July 24th. And we'll keep you guys posted on our plans there. Hopefully some exciting stuff coming very soon with that. We want to have another Falcoholic live show / fan meetup. So I'm interested in putting that on again. So we'll get, if you're interested in coming, mark your calendars for that week. It'll probably be, close to the weekend when they have one of the open practices. And we'll of course send out more info as we get to it. But yeah, thanks for hanging out, guys. Thanks again to Joe and Adnan for coming on tonight. We will see you guys next time on the Falcoholic Live and 30 Birds and Brews podcast. And of course, thanks to BetOnline for sponsoring tonight's episode. Have a great night, folks. Thanks again.